When a mysterious young nurse came to frequent forums related to depression and mental illness, she found others who sympathized with her problems. However, every time she did, she would leave a path of destruction in her wake. As it turns out, she might not be the person that she said she was. Thanks to Rocket Money for sponsoring today's video. The other day I wasted hours trying to cancel my subscription for this news website that I only even signed up for to read one article. After that, they were unwilling to cancel my subscription without an argument over the phone, one that they wouldn't even take because I was in a different country. This was right after having the same sort of thing happen when I was trying to shut off my cable last month as I moved. That got me thinking that I really wish there was some sort of app that just did all of this for you, especially when it came to streaming subscriptions and stuff like that. Well, as it turns out, there is. Rocket Money is a personal finance app that helps you cancel subscriptions, lower your bills, and manage your money better. I like using Rocket Money to safely and securely identify my recurring payments and let them do all the work for me. You can even pick what you want to cancel right in-app with only a couple of taps. Best of all, you don't have to worry about those customer service agents trying to argue you out of it. Rocket Money has helped to save its customers about $740 a year when using all of the app's premium features. They've even saved $500 million in total just from canceled subscriptions alone. So why wait when you can go ahead and get some of your money back? Just go to rocketmoney.com/diretrip or click the link in the description below to get started for free. You can also unlock even more features with premium if you decide to. Every once in a while we come across a case that's a little unprecedented, something that sounds like it should be illegal but technically isn't. Something that's so morally wrong that you can't imagine it would be legal but the law would disagree. This is one of those cases. July 2005. Mark Drybrough, a 32-year-old man in the UK, had been battling with depression for the last 8 years after suffering from a bad glandular fever. He had grown to be completely withdrawn from his friends and family, barely interacting with any of them anymore. He spent most of his nights and evenings using his custom-built PC at home. Mark would often speak about his depression online, opening up to people in a way that he couldn't manage to do in real life. It was here that he began to talk very often to a certain woman online, seemingly a kindred spirit. This woman was also young, debating on ending it all, and very sympathetic as to how he felt. Instead of helping him, though, the woman began to give Mark advice on how to end it all. She would go beyond simply answering his questions, as she started to convince him that, not only was he not wrong for doing it, it was actually the right path for him. It got to the point where they started talking about methods, with the woman convincing Mark that hanging would be the ideal choice. She even offered to stay with him on webcam throughout the whole thing so that he wouldn't be alone. In fact, she said that she had done this before with another man, writing, "In the end, I watched him go, and it was very peaceful, and I was pretty pleased I could make this guy's last moments special for him." The two continued to talk for the whole month of July, but eventually Mark came to abruptly end all correspondence. At 10:32 a.m. on July 27th, he received his final message from the woman, asking, "Are you alright?" But Mark would never respond. Shortly after receiving the message, Mark flipped off his computer and walked over to an interior decorating ladder he had placed in his home. He then attached a rope to one of the bars and slowly drifted away, just as the woman had instructed. Mark's sister would be the one to find him. She had to discover him in that state, seeing his brutal end with her own eyes. Much later on, Mark's sister got a hold of his computer. While looking into it, she came across months of emails and messages that were left open. It was here that she discovered his messages with the mysterious woman who claimed to be a young female nurse. Mark's sister then told their mother what she had found. The mother refused to read any of the messages. The brief breakdown of what they had contained was more than enough. They still didn't even really know what to make of these messages. While it was clear that the nurse had convinced Mark to end it all, it wasn't so apparent whether or not that had been done out of maliciousness or sympathy. Even more importantly, it wasn't even clear who this woman was. They now knew that Mark wasn't the first person that the nurse had coaxed in this manner, but what they didn't know was that he wouldn't be the last either. Nadia Kajuji was a pretty, confident, ambitious young Canadian woman looking to enter into a career in law and politics. Having just turned 18, she was planning to find her future at Ottawa's Carleton University in the fall semester of 2007. However, this was only surface level. Little did anyone know, Nadia was struggling behind the scenes. In video diaries she kept to herself, she recorded her gradual fall into the dark side of depression. When voicing to the school that she was thinking of calling it quits on life, they assisted her with a counselor. This counselor encouraged her to then go to a doctor. This doctor then set her up with some antidepressants, but it was never enough. Despite her struggle, she decided to keep this all between her and her doctors, never opening up to her family about what was going on. Things were only made worse when she found out that she and her boyfriend were going to have a baby. She was actually pretty excited for the baby, although the child was unplanned, but that all came crashing down when she miscarried. Again, though, she kept this to herself and didn't really tell anyone. With the stress of school, being away from her family, and the failed pregnancy tearing her apart mentally, she decided to take to the internet to find a friend. Hopefully someone sympathetic that she could talk to. Ideally, someone who could make her feel better.
If she asks, have you been thinking about suicide? I'd say yes. I am depressed. I have postpartum mood disorder, clinical depression, and insomnia. Sure, you yourself have thought about suicide? Yes, I've thought about suicide. What a shocker. Maybe I wouldn't be thinking about it if I could sleep and be happy. Like, no, you're unwilling to give me the medication to get me to sleep. And then when you admit that you've been thinking about suicide, they're like, well, what methods have you been thinking of? I don't know. All of them. Any of them. Whatever would work. And I hate to sound so lighthearted about this, but come on.
Nadia took to a forum and posted about her idealations. There she got a response from a woman calling herself Cami D, who said that she was a 31-year-old nurse living in Minneapolis. The two got to talking very often, with Nadia asking Cami all of her burning questions that she was too afraid to ask anyone else. In one message, she asked, "I wonder how it will feel to actually die." To which Cami responded with, "Nice," urging her to go through with ending it all. She said that, as a nurse, she knew what methods did and didn't work. She knew what would be painful and what would be easy. So she once again recommended grabbing the rope. However, this isn't at all a pleasant way to go out, and Cami knew that very well. But by the end, Nadia was getting foggy. She was having trouble thinking as her illness took over her.
I don't know if I can stay in school. I can't even go to class. I'm gonna lose this semester. And it seems like it would be easy. You know, just start going to class and doing your work. But I can't. I can't function. And that was what the doctor said, that we should focus on getting me to function.
On March 6, 2008, Nadia had had enough. She told Cami online that she was planning into jumping into the river near her university. She said that she wanted it all just to seem like an accident. She didn't want anyone to know how she was really feeling after all. She thought that people might think that she had fallen in through some weak ice while skating and simply ended at that. She told Cami, "If drowning doesn't get me, hopefully the hypothermia will. I'm planning to attempt this Sunday." Cami, though, didn't like hearing this. She once again encouraged Nadia to go pick up a rope and ideally do it over webcam. She said, "I can help you with it. Proper positioning of the rope is very important." Nadia said sorry, but she wasn't going to be doing that. Cami seemed a little upset, responding with, "Wow, okay, you want to use hanging too? Or can you? Well, that is okay, most people pass out before doing that. If it comes down to hanging, I can help you with it. I'm just trying to help you do what is best for you, not me. It's so fast and certain. I can't think of no other way for me. That is why I'm so into that. I don't want to feel nothing." Cami told her to go out and purchase a nylon rope to her exact specifications, saying that she can help set it up over webcam. Nadia again reiterated that this wouldn't be happening. Cami continued to push, though, such as by saying, "If you wanted to do hanging, we could have done it together online so it would not have been so scary for you." Nadia then thanked Cami for her advice and companionship, but she had made up her mind. She was going out in her own way. Nadia disappeared from her dorm room on March 9, 2008, never to be heard from again. Just as she set out to do, she threw herself into the river. It wouldn't be for 6 weeks that she would finally be found after surfacing on the bank further down the river. The Ottawa police then began to investigate, soon coming across her computer and the messages within. Unfortunately, they were completely unable to pin down who this mysterious nurse actually was. They just assumed that she was simply another mentally ill person somewhere out in the world, and that's kind of where they left it. Back in the UK, in November of 2006, there was a retired school teacher and amateur historian named Celia Blay. She would often provide some amateur counseling online, leading her to talking with a teenage girl from South Africa. This girl told her that she had entered into a pact with a young nurse that she had met online, promising to end their lives on webcam in front of each other. Just 4 hours before it was planned to take place, Celia convinced this girl not to go through with it. Celia pressed her on who this woman she was talking to actually was. She was told that the woman was an online friend named Lee Dow. It just so happened that Celia knew a friend named Kat who was both depressed and also had some experience in these kind of forums. Celia then convinced Kat to help her get online and discover this mysterious nurse's identity. Celia needed someone who both knew how these places worked and was sympathetic enough to gain someone's trust. This was quite a risk as Kat really was depressed and this nurse was very convincing, but given that they knew Lee Dow's tactics beforehand, they figured that they probably wouldn't fall for them. It wasn't all that long before Kat made contact with Lee Dow. She found that Lee Dow had already entered into these pacts with other people before, although she had very obviously never actually gone through with them. Lee Dow continued to try and convince Kat to enter into a pact with her as well, promising that this time she was actually ready and was going to go through with it. Lee Dow then convinced Kat to go buy a rope and alcohol. While Kat was only playing the part, Lee Dow was so convincing that she worried she might actually talk her into using it. Lee Dow continued, saying that she had already watched the young man in England end his own life, saying, "He asked me to watch as he was all alone. I didn't want to, thinking it was some perverted ploy of his, but after many hours of talking I agreed to watch him die so he would not die alone." She then added that she was ready to do the same with Kat, saying, "I hope we can go somewhere close to the same time as possible. It's good to have support at this time of need. Hugs and love." Celia continued to talk to other people on these forums, finding that Lee Dow had actually gone by several different usernames over time, like Falcon Girl and Cammy D. Celia decided to post warnings all about, urging others to not listen to any of these usernames, saying that they were not there with the intention to help. While Kat tried to talk more with Lee Dow, who we know as Cammy D, there was always some sort of convenient excuse as to why they couldn't talk on webcam. It would always end up with Kat being on camera while Cammy D would just be watching. Cammy's camera would be broken, her connection would be bad, or something would go wrong each and every time they talked. Eventually, they were able to come across some material that showed Cammy's IP address, which showed that the messages were coming from a residence in Minnesota in the US. And then, by pure chance, Cammy D accidentally flipped her webcam on, revealing a pasty, middle-aged man. There was never any Cammy D, there was no Lee Dow, there was no Falcon Girl. All of these people were one man, William Melchert-Dinkel, a nurse, a married man, and a father of 2 kids living in Faribault, Minnesota. He was nothing but a simple family man with a sexual interest in coaxing people into their own deaths so he could watch as entertainment. To make it even more evident that William was their guy, it turns out that a local high school sports team in his area was called the Falcons. There was no way that this could possibly be anyone else. Celia went to the local police with what she had found. To her shock, they weren't interested at all, especially given that William was in another country and hasn't physically helped any of these people in their lives. They shooed her away, telling her, "If it bothers you, look the other way." With the authorities in the UK unwilling to do a single thing, Celia instead decided to contact the FBI in the United States. When it became clear that they weren't going to do anything either, she decided to contact the police in the local area in Minnesota, and finally they had a bite. The local authorities in Faribault saw this as the issue it was and were more than interested in talking to William. They went out to his home and confronted him. They were shocked to see this normal, unassuming father open the door. When they brought up all the allegations against him, William started by blaming it all on his 2 daughters. However, after they questioned him with what they had been sent, he said that he may have helped 5 or 6 people end their own lives. The police's search led them to connect William to both Mark and Nadia's cases. Eventually, William came to admit that he had spoken to dozens of people over the years and that he was successful at least 5 times. A few months later, William came to lose his job when his license was suspended by the Minnesota Board of Nursing. He had actually been working at a nursing home where his superiors were shocked to hear what he had done but couldn't ignore all of the evidence. His supervisor said, "The Bill Dinkel I know wouldn't have anything to do with that, but that's all I can tell you. But things change. 15, 20 years ago is a long time ago." So what did the supervisor mean by that last sentence? Well, it turns out that this wasn't really William's first rodeo. The police came to learn that he had been getting into quite a bit of trouble over the years. When William started working in 1994, he was reprimanded several times in only 4 months. He had been administering medication without noting it on charts, failing to report errors, and failing to update doctors on a certain patient's condition, almost as if he were hoping for something to happen to them. And it did. This patient's health rapidly declined and they died on the way to get treated. In 1997, when William had moved on to working as a nurse at Pleasant Manor, a nursing home, he got into trouble once again. 2 different patients mysteriously ended up with bruises after being visited by him. He was then fired from this job. This led to the Commissioner of Health looking into his conduct. William was heavily criticized for what was called incomplete nursing care and poor critical thinking skills. It was also noted that his practice was unsafe because he continually demonstrated difficulty retaining information, following direction, and integrating information and concepts. William blamed it all on having problems at home that were spilling into the rest of his life, along with having ADHD and anxiety. The medical board came to put William under what was basically probation, putting a series of conditions on his license. He was to pay a $150 fine, have increased supervision, and required to take education classes. For a while, he seemed to get his problems under control, and eventually the conditions were lifted in 2003. Nadia's parents had long known that their daughter had been talking with another troubled woman online prior to her death, but now they were told that this woman was actually a man who was still alive and well. The Ottawa police then gave them a stack of pages of the conversations between the two. Her father, after reading, could only say, "He's a monster." Nadia's mother said, "He is a predator who is responsible for several deaths and needs to be held legally accountable for them." The police came to look into all of William's past conversations. There, they found evidence that he had been talking to Mark as well, all the way up until the end. However, given how anonymous these forums were, it was very difficult to track down anyone else that he had talked to, especially given how much time had passed. To make things even worse, this case was unprecedented. They had no idea how to even go about prosecuting someone who used their words over the internet to convince someone to do what they did. After all, it was free speech, and he didn't physically assist them, didn't buy anything for them, and didn't gain anything from their deaths either. Convicting him would prove to be extremely difficult. However, the police were able to find a decades-old forgotten law that made it illegal to encourage someone to end themselves like this. While it was likely written at a time when it was implied that this speech would be done in person, there wasn't anything specifically saying that it couldn't be over the internet. This offense could result in 15 years in prison or a fine of $30,000. William went to check himself into the hospital. A nurse's assessment stated that William likely got off on watching people end their lives. He flat out told them that yes, he did. It really did excite him. He admitted that he had entered into numerous pacts just to watch other people die while having zero intention of going through with it himself. He then asked the nurses for help dealing with this fascination. After leaving the hospital, William was briefly spoken to by the media. He, feeling cocky that he would never be charged with anything, told them, "Nothing is going to come of it. I've moved on with my life and that's it." Funnily enough, his wife Joyce was by his side the entire time. Even knowing what he did, she enthusiastically supported him all the way. William was shocked to hear on March 15, 2011, that he was going to be charged. In a criminal complaint filed in Rice County, he was accused of advising, encouraging, or assisting with both Nadia and Mark over the internet. While the case was underway, he was ordered to stay off of the internet entirely. After a trial, he was finally sentenced on May 4th. However, it would be nowhere near the sentence anyone was hoping for. William would only be spending 360 days in jail, not even one whole year. However, things went into limbo as there was still a debate about free speech preventing William from even being charged in the first place. Then, in 2014, the Supreme Court came to review the case. They reversed William's conviction, saying that his actions were protected under free speech and remanded the case back to Rice County. The state argued that free speech didn't apply in this case because this specific speech was made in order to incite an illegal act. However, ending one's own life isn't illegal in either Minnesota, Canada, or Britain. As a result, neither was incitement. William's lawyer, Terry Watkins, said, "It was immoral, but that doesn't mean it was illegal." Mark's mother argued, "This man appointed himself as Mark's executioner. He whispered in his ear each time he logged onto the computer. Because of his medical experience, he knew exactly who he was looking for, what he was doing, the buttons he needed to push." The judge in Rice County then argued that William had indeed assisted the two victims with the very specific advice that he had given and that it wasn't simply speech. This was proven in Mark's case, but since Nadia didn't use the method he suggested, he was hit with a lesser charge of attempting to help her take a life. This time, in 2014, the judge sentenced William to 3 years in prison, but would suspend that sentence if he spent 360 days in jail and agreed to 10 years of probation afterwards. William agreed, and during sentencing said, "I am sorry for my actions and what I have done. I have repented." However, William would once again get off easy. He was released in 2015 after serving 178 days in jail, roughly half the time he was sent in for. Even though he was now out, his lawyer continued to push for an appeal in the case. He said, "The way it was handled is a bit hard to understand. The case was remanded on assisting the victims, but assisting the victims was never charged. That's a procedural problem over and above everything else. There is also a free speech issue, a probable cause issue, and a due process issue. We're kind of back at the start. I don't care how many times we have to appeal. We'll end up being vindicated." The prosecutor said that he will continue to argue to defend the convictions. William's lawyer said very much the same, stating that he would continue to fight it. As it seems now, that's all in limbo. William is now a free man, now working as a truck driver after never getting his medical license back. However, he is still alive, still has his family by his side, and will likely never face any more time for what he did. That's much more than can be said of his victims. Once again, thank you for watching my video. If you found it interesting, please give it a like, it really helps me out in the algorithm, and feel free to subscribe if you want to see more content like this. Just recently, I've started up a podcast with 4 of my friends called the NBR Podcast. If you find this channel interesting, you might find that one interesting too. I also opened up a merch store recently. There you can get yourself some cool Dire Trip t-shirts. If you want, go ahead and follow me on social media, because if anything were to ever happen to this channel again, that would probably be the only way you'd ever hear about it. I also really appreciate when people follow me on Patreon. There you can get videos early, ad-free, and uncensored. Channel memberships are back up too, and you can get the same benefits there as well. Once again, this has been your host Kyle. Thank you, and good night.